Hey, real quick before we start the podcast, if you have listened to more than one episode, can you do me a favor and rate and review the show? Now, I'm not big on asking for favors, but we really want to get this podcast listed in the top of all health and fitness podcasts, not just the fitness category. This will take you less than a minute, and if you could do that, that would make us friends forever. And since we refuse all sponsors on the show, this will be my only ask rather than telling you to go check out some supplement or product we don't actually believe in, like every other podcast out there. So please rate and review. Okay, that's it. To the podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here, and today I am talking about the new cycle we have at Garage Gym Athlete. So typically we do like a new cycle webinar. Today is going to be a little bit different. It is still kind of a webinar style presentation. I will have some slides during today's podcast, YouTube video, whatever you want to call it. So I'm kind of prefacing this because if you are listening, I'm going to do my best to make sure that if you are a listener to the podcast and you're listening to this right now, you still get all the information that you need to be able to make a decision on training with Garage Gym Athlete. If you are on YouTube or watching this like in the Facebook group or something, the visuals are going to make a lot of sense and help you out. But like I said, I will do my best for the audio only listener. So switching it up today, first off, this is the start of a brand new cycle. So it's our last 12-week cycle in 2022. So this is our fourth one. We do 4 per year. And so what you're going to see is the day this is officially published will be the first day of training. So if you are not a part of our community, you are not a paying member, go to garagegymathlete.com and sign up for a 14-day free trial. That means you're going to get the first 2 weeks of this new cycle 100% for free. You can test it out and decide if you want to continue training with us for the rest of the 12 weeks. So you get those first 2 weeks as a trial run, get to see if, okay, first week was fun. How's the second week? And I'm going to show you, I'm just going to straight up show you the training for the first week of each track that we have, or at least 4 of the tracks. And we do this every single time that we have a new cycle webinar. We give sample programming so people can make the most informed decision possible. But if you're on the fence, maybe you were training with us once, you tried something out different, you realized, hey, they probably don't put a lot of thought into their programming, or it's not as effective, it's not as fun. Come back to Garage Gym Athlete. We'd love to have you back. If you've been listening for a long time and you haven't yet joined the programming side of things, the meat of what we do, we're podcasters and YouTubers and all that stuff, like 3rd, 4th, 5th on the list. We're programmers and coaches first. And so that's what we, want to do and help you with if that's what you need. Now, for all of our current athletes, you may be accustomed to a typical new cycle webinar. This one will be a little bit different. I normally start with a bunch of updates and hashing out some information that you need to know or might want to know. So that's going to be at the end of today's presentation. So just so you know, I'm going to have a few slides to go over, but this is going to be different than what you're typically used to. And there is a big announcement at the end. So big announcement at the end. It'll be right at the beginning of my slides. So if you want to stick around, make sure you do for the announcement that I have there. But today, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be talking about some new research. We normally cover some science on the podcast, and I'm going to do that today. Huge new study came out this year that we haven't fully covered or even talked about, and I would love to talk about it today. Just break it down a little bit for you guys so you can be aware of what we do, and what we do is concurrent training. So I'm going to go over that new research. After the research, I'm going to briefly talk about the tracks. And when I talk about the tracks, I'm not just going to give a quick overview. I'm going to give the quick overview, but then I'm actually going to open the back end of our software. We use Team Builder to program for our athletes. I'm going to actually open the back end. This is like the coach's login, so not even the athlete's login, and let you see the programming for each of these tracks, and just where I can talk you through it a little bit more and let you see each track. So, and help you make a decision. And again, if you want to download the sample programming, you can at any point in time, and I'll give you the link when we're getting towards the end of the podcast as well. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. And again, like I said, if you're listening, I'll still make this make the most sense possible. And we're going to start by talking about the new research. So a study came out in 2022 called Compatibility of Concurrent Aerobic and Strength Training for Skeletal Muscle Size and Function, an updated systematic review and meta-analysis. So it's a newly updated systematic review and meta-analysis assessed how concurrent and aerobic strength training influences body composition and strength. And ultimately, it's answering the question, does cardio negatively impact strength training and muscle mass? And I have the link for you if you want to search it. You can see there on the screen if you want to like tear this up, or dig into it a little bit more yourself. But this has been a big question for us at Garage Gym Athlete. What we do at Garage Gym Athlete is concurrent training. So it doesn't matter if you're on the Enduro Track, the Shred Track, Hard to Kill Track, Strength Track. It does not matter. It's all concurrent training. And I like to emphasize that every time we have a new cycle coming up, because some people might think, oh, the powerlifting track, for strength training, or the running track is the Enduro Track. None of them are like that. So we're concurrent training first, and then after concurrent training, we kind of splinter off into having a little bit more of a focus. And so, given the Enduro Track, you could slant your training a little bit more towards endurance, aerobic things, but ultimately still be concurrent training because there's enough strength training and training of the other energy systems. Likewise, on the strength track, you can have predominantly strength training in any given week and over the course of a 12-week cycle, but there's still going to be the conditioning elements that make it concurrent training. So we never go all in on one area. And the reason being is because we feel that concurrent training, and science is starting to agree more and more, concurrent training is the best, not only for your performance, but for your longevity, and everything else. If you just want to get better at things and you don't have a specific sport that you're trying to train for, concurrent training is going to be the best. And it's not necessarily CrossFit or anything like that. I really think that concurrent training is more structured strength programming, structured aerobic and energy system programming. And so, what this study looked at, we'll dive into it a little bit more, was a total of 43 different studies. So, the reason I love these systematic reviews is because they are more concrete, right? We're looking at a study of studies. So, the findings we pull out of these are way more concrete, things that we can believe as scientific fact, the more of these that come out. Normally, when you find a study and it's like, hey, this was done on concurrent training, there are 14 participants, that's great. It helps us in a certain direction, but it doesn't truly leave us with these giant conclusions that we can truly, say, hey, this is probably the case. So this is 43 different studies. In the studies, there's 1,090 participants, and this is how it broke down between the groups. So 590 participants performed both aerobic and strength training. And sorry, I misspoke when I said groups, because remember, it's a study of studies. So 43 different studies, and they broke them out into these sections. So the 590 participants performed both aerobic and strength training, and 500 participants performed strength training alone. Okay, so that's how it broke down. A majority of them were doing both, and a lot of them were doing only strength training. And what the researchers were measuring, or zeroing in on when they were looking at the study of studies, they were looking at participants' max strength, explosive strength, muscle hypertrophy via leg press, and muscle hypertrophy is muscle growth, knee extensions, jump height, muscle CSA, and participants' quad muscles. So really, they took some pretty good parameters. Like, I'm actually pretty happy with these, because they're not, it wasn't too slanted, and they were taking a look at a lot of different things. And the last bullet there is the most common aerobic training interventions included were running and cycling. So there are a lot of different things that you can do, and it still be concurrent training. But when we're talking about, what we predominantly use, it's going to be running, rowing, cycling, ski erg, airdyne, these types of things that are way more monostructural in nature and not necessarily mixed modal or circuit training as our cardio. which a lot of people are doing these days. So this is way more 100% in line with garage gym athlete style programming, which is awesome. I like to see these kind of studies come out just because it gives us, as a company, a better idea of how things are really coming up. So let's jump into some of the findings. So first off, what we're looking at is maximal strength, muscle hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, and explosive strength. And I also agree with the three different things that they're looking at. Sometimes I feel like I look at a concurrent training study and they're only talking about strength or they're only talking about hypertrophy. They rarely ever cover explosive strength. And I wrote an article a very long time ago called The Missing Element in Your Strength Programming, where I talk about being explosive and dynamic and how important those things are for increased strength. And so they're looking at all three of those. I was also incredibly happy with that. So let's first take a look at maximal strength. So the researchers found no interference effect in the group performing both aerobic and strength training. So that's awesome. Awesome first finding here for maximal strength. If you are looking to get stronger, but you're like, you know what? I don't want to be this strong guy who can't run to the end of the street and back, or can't play soccer with my kids, or can't do X, Y, and Z activity, can't go for a hike because it's going to affect my strength gains. A lot of people think like that. This study, a very large systematic review, is saying the researchers found no interference effect in the group performing both aerobic and strength training. And if you haven't heard of the interference effect, it's also known as the concurrent training effect. It's just this theory where if you do strength training and then also aerobic training, there's going to be this interference with your results. Whether it's hormonal signaling or whatever. To be honest, they don't fully know, but they just know sometimes the results can vary if you're adding both of these things in. But this one said the researchers found no interference effect in both in the group performing both aerobic and strength training, and this is when compared to strength training results. So that's awesome. Next, we'll look at muscle hypertrophy. What was the takeaway there? The researchers found no interference effect from aerobic training. This is with muscle growth. This one actually was hard for me to wrap my head around because that's kind of the opposite of what I've heard for a long time. It was more like, well, if you want to get stronger and do aerobic training, that's probably fine. But if you want to do hypertrophy, muscle growth stuff, it's going to be a little bit harder. And that's always kind of what I've thought. And when I'm trying to program, I try to separate these things because that's best practices in concurrent training. But what they found was the researchers found no interference effect from aerobic training. And it said these results were also noted to be independent of aerobic training frequency, training status, and the participant's age. So there wasn't even like in some cases, it was just the researchers found no interference effect from aerobic training in muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth. That's awesome. Because what this is doing for us is it's helping us solidify more of what we've been doing, not just be like, hey, we're right, but we actually look at these scientific studies when we're programming to make sure that we're staying within like concurrent training rules, not putting any, too much conditioning on a day where we have strength training, given the goal, whether that is purely maximal strength or hypertrophy. We actually look at these things when we're programming. And this is actually easing some of the restrictions from a scientific standpoint, because it's saying, hey, if it's strength or muscle growth, you don't need to worry about it so much. And I think that's awesome. Awesome takeaway. Now let's get into the last one that they looked at, which is explosive strength. And this one says there was a significant interference effect for the studies that performed concurrent training within the same sessions. So less than 20 minutes between aerobic and strength training. So I think that this is an awesome thing to know. So when I look at this research in total, it's saying if you want to just get stronger, raw strength, doesn't really matter. You want to grow your muscle, get bigger, cool. Doesn't really matter with the addition of aerobic training. But if you want to be more explosive, there is a significant interference effect when the training is done within the same session, more specifically when it's done within less than 20 minutes, which, to be honest, if we were programming it, it would be that way if we didn't separate the days, because we try to get all our programming done in under an hour, right? So we don't normally have 2 session a day training, and we'd never do in Garage Gym Athlete unless you broke it up yourself. So this is really good to know. So I still think explosive strength training is a very big part of gaining maximal strength. I don't think it's as important in muscle hypertrophy, but if you are looking to gain strength and you're starting to stall out, I think what you are missing is that explosive dynamic element to your training. And this is saying there was a significant interference effect. So that's good to know. It does not mean you cannot become more explosive while doing aerobic training. That's not what it means. So who is this most important for? Well, I think it's an important element of strength training, but it's most important for anyone who is truly an athlete competing in something that it requires you to be explosive. So if you were a sprinter, anything that's involving jumping, these kind of things, Olympic lifting is a very explosive sport. These type of things, you probably want to be very mindful of how you throw in your conditioning. It's not that you don't do it. It's just a matter of how you do it. And I'm going to get into that in a second. So really awesome for us to know if you're doing maximal strength, we don't need to worry about things. Hypertrophy, don't need to worry about it. But then when we're getting into explosive strength, we need to take into some considerations. So the main takeaway overall from this study, concurrent aerobic and strength training does not interfere with improving maximal strength and muscle hypertrophy when compared to strength training alone. And then I said, what about if you're wanting to improve explosive strength? If that's your primary goal, you may benefit from separating your aerobic and strength training by at least 3 hours apart to achieve optimal adaptations. Now, this is from other concurrent training research. If you want to completely not have to worry about concurrent training, the interference effect, concurrent training effect, there are two ways to go about it. The first way would be just separate your days. Always a strength day, always an aerobic day or conditioning day. And dependent on what your goal is, if you want more strength, you'd have more strength days. And fewer aerobic days. If you want aerobic emphasis, you'd flip that. So more aerobic days, or let's just say conditioning days, fewer strength days, given a 7-day training week. So maybe 3 strength training days, 2 conditioning days if strength was the focus, and flip that if conditioning or aerobic base was your focus. But that's not always possible. And so the next thing that you want to look at is separation in the session itself. And so if we program it in the same session, we're just not that worried about it because it might be a smaller part of what the major is, the main thing that we're programming for that cycle. But if you are like really wanting to use our programming, but you want to kind of cater it to something specific you're doing, separate it by 3 to 4 hours. That's been repeated over and over and over and over in concurrent training literature and research. There's this magic window when you get to this 3 and 4 hour mark. The body has probably recovered enough to where now you can go and do a different form of training and not have the interference effect show up. And so that's one thing that you just you can put that feather in your cap and, know how to implement your training in the future. But that one's really important. Overall, I love this study. I think it really helps us. Also should alleviate a lot of concerns from guys and gals out there who might be afraid of one of their things getting harmed. Whether that is you're more of an aerobic based, endurance based athlete, you don't want to add strength training because you think it's going to slow you down or hurt your engine. It won't. And same in reverse. It's if you're a strength athlete and you want to add some conditioning, it won't hurt as bad. It won't really hurt your gains in strength. Now, one thing to note, this is kind of moving away from the study and just me talking about things that we've seen. I still think that they don't go to this level and they can't really. But if I were to do a study, I would want to look at heart rate zone training and the different zones compared to strength training. Because I think if you're doing muscle strength or muscle hypertrophy or maybe even explosive strength in conjunction with zone 2, it might not be that bad. Zone 4 could be a lot worse. And this is where I think there's actually a bigger problem, and it's in execution. So if you're going for muscle hypertrophy, and when you're like, okay, I'm going to go for a 3-mile run, and you run those 3 miles in zone 4 and touching zone 5 because really you just don't know how to run and you're kind of out of shape, you're out of running shape, that's not good. And I just think with how the body is utilizing the energy systems, it would hurt your muscle hypertrophy goal a lot more. And so I think proper execution of conditioning and energy system training is still very important when it comes to concurrent training, but we don't have the research on that yet. This is just what I'm telling you as someone who's been doing this for a long time. So execute your energy system training properly. All right, that's it for the new research that I'm going over today. Now I'm going to get into the tracks. So we have a number of different tracks at Garage Gym Athlete, and the ones that I normally brief are going to be Shred, Hard to Kill, Endure, and Strength. So I'll give a quick overview of the track, and then, like I said, I will actually jump into what they look like at the back end of our software, so you can kind of see that and learn more about the tracks coming up. And again, I will give you the full breakdown of I'll give you the full PDF with the breakdown of all the workouts so you can actually see all the workouts and even try them out if you want to at the end. All right, so let's talk about I'm actually going to talk about Hard to Kill first. So, Hard to Kill is normally hard to brief because it follows the same format most of the time. So, cycle continue in the 30 or in the H2K fashion and hit every energy system and 13 areas of training we focus on every 30-day wave. You see very focused training sessions to coincide with more emerging research on concurrent training, i.e., what we just talked about. And that's a big thing I'm looking at when I'm running this in the Hard to Kill track, which is what I program personally. So let's go ahead and jump into the Hard to Kill track. So give me a second as I kind of change my screen real quick. Again, if you're listening, I'll do my best to provide the details here. So what I have here, I'm in the back end of our training software, and I have the Hard to Kill track pulled up for the first week of the new cycle. And the days that I'm going to kind of ignore are Thursday because those are our standard rest day. And Saturday, I'm also going to ignore because that's our Meet Yourself Saturday, and it's the same for every track. So what you'll see when you dive in here, we have our EO3 elements, which is something that you should be doing each and every single day. And it's basic things like getting enough water each and every day, sleep, sunlight, all those kind of things. And this is just like a 9-item checklist that you can kind of knock off and make sure that you're going through. Then we have block 0. You're going to see that also on every single day, which is our warm up for the day that coincides with a workout. And what you're seeing here, let's just take overview because I'm not going to click into each and every single day and every single workout. Again, you can do that when you get the sample programming. But what you're going to see is some very focused strength training work. We have back squats and deadlifts. Here, you see deadlifts again here, and then more deadlifts here, wide grip, and then more deadlifts here. So you're seeing a large lower body and posterior chain emphasis with this cycle, especially the first wave. So there's going to be a lot more strength training involved in the Hard to Kill track, not to compete with the strength track, but this is just something that we normally do. I normally do in the Hard to Kill track. I'll go from, a little bit more of an aerobic focus, maybe even I'll switch between absolute strength and relative strength. So whether that's absolute being just actual tonnage, poundage on the bar, or relative strength, body weight stuff. So we're going a little bit more absolute strength here, and we're doing a lot of interval training. So we have 60-60s, 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off. And then we have some different aerobic circuits, so mixed modal and aerobic, to keep conditioning sessions short, but also not to compete with like your aerobic base. So we're training different energy systems, but we're doing it through mixed modal type circuit training. And so this is kind of what you can expect this cycle. So a lot of interval conditioning, a lot more barbell work, for lack of a better term, just to kind of categorize that, a lot of barbell work on the Hard to Kill track. And I think you'll really like the conditioning because we're not doing as much super long duration, boring conditioning, which we have been doing a lot of in the past. And to be honest, I know it's good for you, but it is boring. People don't like that as much. So we're going to be doing a lot more engaging conditioning that will keep you going. All right. So now let's talk about the shred track. So the shred track, very similar to the Hard to Kill track. It always has the same goal. Shred track is concurrent training, but it's going to want to mimic a little bit more of a bodybuilding style type workout. So let's talk about shred track. Training days on this track will center around supersets at tempo, which couple monostructural exercises with push and pull movements for additional high volume accessory work. Some days are upper body or lower body focused and will be heavier weight supersets and rep schemes to maintain or even build your strength. Other days will complement your heavy weight training with higher rep count exercises for smaller muscle groups. Training like this delivers strong metabolic stress on the muscles, forcing them to grow. And so the shred track, always a fan favorite. A lot of people get a lot of good results from our shred track. VD does a phenomenal job programming it. So let me just show you what this looks like so you can actually see it in execution or hear it. So I'll pull that up now. So what I have here is the shred track. You're seeing, again, the first week of the new cycle. Going to ignore the rest day and going to ignore the Meet Yourself Saturday. But if I just, as a programmer and coach, when I just look at this, I see a lot of letters, right? So BBB, CC, DD, CC, BBB, DD. Like there's so many supersets. And again, there are always a lot of supersets on shred because of the research that backs up supersets and how efficient they are. So we always try and keep our training into these 50 minute blocks or 1 hour workouts. And when we look at that, we're like, okay, but we need to fit in a lot of volume because a lot of volume is necessary for these body composition goals that people have. And the best way to do that is through supersets. And so there's a lot of them on here. And you'll see some single arm work, close grip bench press, body weight work. And then you're going to see that throughout body weight work, more kettlebell stuff, rear foot elevated, going back to single leg, all great things that are going to force a little bit more stabilization in your workouts and also just get you more involved with not having to only be on a barbell where you can start to develop some imbalances if one side is stronger than the other. It's always good to get single arm and single leg work in there. You see some floor presses. So we do have the barbell work come in, but then seated dumbbells, lying dumbbell, tricep extensions, and everything that you see here. So there are some core circuits and then some shorter aerobic or conditioning circuits. So shred is just a great track. I mean, they all are. I'm super biased, obviously, right? But shred is an awesome track just because of how it follows the research and how much work we put into a relatively short training session. So awesome stuff here from VD. If you want to go on the shred track, definitely something that you should check out. The next one that we will look at will be the Enduro Track. So what we're going to talk about with the Enduro Track is just overall, what it does and who should be a part of it. So again, the Enduro Track is not for it's concurrent training. So it's not for somebody who wants to PR their marathon at sub 3 hours. I'm just be very honest with you. If that's your goal, you probably need to go somewhere a little bit more endurance based than what we are. And so it is concurrent training. It is endurance focused. So the Enduro Track will be specifically designed to build more endurance oriented athletes, concentrated on more extended events requiring a more relentless and conditioned athlete that can switch between long and short sessions, maintaining intensity. And I apologize for stumbling on my words there for a second, but ultimately the Enduro Track is another great track if you are looking to kind of like it mentions, you want to compete in something, you want to have the conditioning, you want to be able to switch through different modalities without having any problems at different conditioning levels, really up to an hour and a half, something like that. You're going to be really solid following this. And so let's take a look at exactly what the Enduro Track looks like. So the Enduro Track, you can see the difference. And I'm just kind of giving you my view. And this is a big reason I kind of wanted to come back to the back end of our software and show you things in here is because, you can just from a bird's eye view tell how different the tracks are. So, we're on our third one that I'm showing you here today, and you saw Hard to Kill. And, what I see from the bird's eye view, Hard to Kill, I saw, a lot of barbell work, some conditioning mixed in there. And then we switched to shred and you just see all this single leg. You see this isolation. You see all of these supersets, and you can just see how different the programming really is just from the bird's eye view without even getting into the nitty gritty. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, you can with the sample programming, but it's just so cool to see how different they truly are when you look at them. So the Enduro Track, you're seeing longer 4 block, which means 40-minute conditioning sessions. You have some more conditioning sessions here. And that's what all the blues are, more conditioning for 4 blocks. And see, that's one thing that you need to pay attention to, because you just need to see how long these things are. You might see sit up here like for 1 block, and then you see this 10-minute aerobic workout. Well, it's not actually 10 minutes; it's 4 blocks. So this is going to be set it over and over again. So going through this circuit. So you see a lot of conditioning in here. We have some metabolic conditioning, weighted lunges, rotational side planks. So getting into body weight stuff, and also all the conditioning that makes you better, which is 3 minutes, 15-second bursts. So he's going through all the different energy systems there. Then we get to longer aerobic, and then we get to mixed modal aerobic, which is really beneficial if you just are an athlete that needs to put in work. And the athletes I'm talking about, really, when I mention things like that, EMTs, police officers, firefighters, military, like any of those people who just need to kind of rely on your body. I don't think that a CrossFit workout is what you need. We call it mixed modal aerobic, and it's just kind of moving through at not a high intensity. It doesn't need to be high intensity. You could honestly be in zone 2, zone 3 during these workouts, because they're 40 minutes long. And so it's not 40 minutes of intensity is the expectation. It's 40 minutes of work, and just putting in the work without stopping. And just think about how rare that actually is in most any training program. You can train for an hour, but if you're doing like a bodybuilding style or strength training program, you're going to do a set. Let's say that set takes you 15 seconds. 15 seconds of work. Then you're going to sit around and check your phone and rest for 2 to 3 minutes. Then you're going to do your next set for 15 to 20 seconds. Sure, this can get you stronger. Not arguing that point. But if you're someone who really needs to depend on your body, depend on your fitness, something like a 40-minute mixed modal aerobic workout on a weekly basis is going to build a different level of not only fitness, but grit, your ability to just keep going and depend on your body when you need to. So phenomenal programming. I love the Enduro Track. Always my favorite to see what Marco's doing when he programs in there. And so the last one that we'll cover today is going to be the strength track. And the strength track, again, it's like the Enduro Track, but strength focused. So you will see a lot of strength work, but got to have enough of those conditioning in there for us to still consider it concurrent training. So we'll talk about the strength track real quick. So as always, strength is the name of the game here. The main lifts will be focused on power and dynamic efforts, with accessory work more towards heavy and volume. You will regularly see some interval weight training, lots of deadlifts, and of course, weighted carry. So interval weight training is a very hard style of conditioning. Just think of heavy barbell work done in a metabolic conditioning style, but with rest built in. And they're really, really beneficial for developing a serious engine while maintaining some of that top end strength. And I think it's awesome that it's on the strength track, and you guys will really enjoy any IWTs that you see, which are interval weight training sessions. And they're very, very effective at getting you results. So let's go take a look at that programming real quick. This will be the last one of the day before I get into, like I said, the big announcements and other stuff that we have going on. All right, so this is the strength track. So again, if we're just zooming out and I'm looking at this big picture wise, I see a lot of barbells all over the place. So you see barbell here, 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 all that day. And again, I'm ignoring Thursday and Saturday because that's rest day and meet your stuff Saturday. So a lot of push press, lots of back squat. I see a lot of volume. You have your barbell side bends, hitting all the main lifts, doing a lot of isolated work. But then we have all of these conditioning. So disco deads, we have an interval weight training session here, which I talked about briefly. You're seeing 30-second bursts. You're seeing some 20-minute, and then you're some 20-minute conditioning, and then you're seeing sprints. So a lot of lower end type conditioning, and that's typically what we want to see on the strength track. So you're getting a lot more strength work, and your conditioning isn't going to be this long, grueling stuff that really can just take away your energy for wanting to perform more volume and training throughout the week. And so it's easier to do a couple of sprints for conditioning as opposed to 30-minute run or whatever. So that is the strength track, really solid. If you want to get stronger, this is the place for you to be. It's the best place to do it. If you are also looking to that, this cycle Hard to Kill might be a great place to do that as well. If you just want slightly more conditioning, but still probably about equated volume on the strength side. So that is everything. I'm going to get into some of the housekeeping stuff. So I normally go over some slides, and like I said, I have some big announcement. So far today, we've gone over new concurrent training research. I showed you the actual back end of our software, the different tracks, and went over the track brief so you can kind of understand those. But I do have one big announcement today, and that is we have a new track. So a new track at Garage Gym Athlete. It is called the Bare Bones Track. So this is the brainchild of Joe Courtney. You've heard him on the podcast. He's here most every week talking to you guys. So he came up with this track after running into an injury. He actually got injured. You guys probably heard him talk about it on the podcast. Hurt his lower back, but he didn't want to stop training. And so he was putting together his own programming, which has ultimately turned into the Bare Bones Track. The Bare Bones Track will be primarily body weight, kettlebell, some band work, and ring work. So we do have the no gear track, but the thing that we try to hold ourselves to on the no gear track is actually no gear. So you could switch to the no gear track and you would not need any equipment. That's the big thing that we're looking for on the no gear track. The Bare Bones track is just a step above that. So you're not going to need a barbell. You're not going to need a lot of different equipment, but you'll see a lot of body weight work, kettlebell, bands, rings. Very simple, very effective. And if you want to switch to this, it's actually available now. You can go to the track change form inside the app, and you can now switch to the Bare Bones track if you want to give it a try. So other quick housekeeping items before I get out of here. So again, we are concurrent training. That's what we do. Every fourth week of our training, we do body geometry, which is a form of our programming, also concurrent training that balances an athlete out. And we want you to be doing those EO3 elements every single day. And you saw them in the programming. And then if you just need a little bit more help on breaking down, okay, what should I be on the strength track, shred track, enduro track, hard to kill track? I like to show people this chart where you can just see how much each one is programmed. And so the enduro track, 50% conditioning, strength track, 75% strength, shred track is going to have a lot of strength, a lot of endurance, and a lot of conditioning. And then the hard to kill is going to be equal between conditioning, energy system training wise, endurance training, and strength training. So if you just need a quick overview, that's a good thing to look at and understand. A few other housekeeping items. If you want to submit a Garage Gym tour, you've probably seen them on our YouTube channel. You can go to garagegymathlete.com/tour. And so anybody is eligible to do this in the Garage Gym Athlete community. And you take your phone out, and we have the instructions. If you go to that link, garagegymathlete.com/tour, take your phone out, do a quick 2 to 4 minute video, and it could be longer if you want to. Just a full tour of your garage gym. People love to see how other athletes are doing it. You shoot us that tour. We're going to publish it on our YouTube channel so other people can see it, which is really cool. But we're also going to send you some free gear if you actually take that step. So we will send you a banner, we will send you a shirt, a hoodie, whatever you want, because we know your time is valuable. And if you take the time to do that, we want to kind of, compensate you for that time. And we do that through merchandise at our store. So go do that. We would love to see some more tours. So go to garagegymathlete.com/tour, and we will get you on our YouTube channel and get you some free gear. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please do that. You can go to garagegymathlete.com, click on podcast. You have a number of different ways. I mean, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, all the different things. We are there. And we are, if you're listening to this, publish it on Monday. We just finished up Fit Week, but I would like to make sure that people know, if they didn't already, if you PR'd during Fit Week and you publish that video in the Facebook group, you are eligible to get the black PR shirt for one PR, or if you filmed 5 different ones and you hit 5 different PRs, you get the red PR shirt. And I want to send a lot of PR shirts out. So go submit those things, and that way we can get you your shirt. Now the 300 challenge is still going on. I'm not going to cover this as much. You can go to dailyover-decades.com. But we are nearing the end, guys. The last quarter of the year here, the last cycle of the year. Stay strong, stay focused, whether you're doing the 300 or the 200 challenge, and push it this last 12 weeks as we get towards the end here. Now, I told you I was going to give you a link to the training. So if you go to garagegymathlete.com/2020, so that's 2020, you will be taken to a place to get the sample programming. It's also in 5-Line Friday. Every single Friday, we send you either the current cycle's programming, and in this case, it would be the next cycle. And we are actually have changed the name. It's not called 5-Line Friday anymore. We have changed the name of the newsletter to The Garage, and we have a lot more information being published in that. So if you're not a part of the newsletter, you can go to garagedymathlete.com and sign up. But again, if you want the sample training, the entire thing, every single track, the first week of training, go to garagedymathlete.com/2020. That's 2020. And you can download your full copy. But that's it for today's presentation, guys. Hopefully you like this format, going over some research, going over the tracks, and then doing some quick updates for all the athletes at the end. For all of our athletes who just crushed it during Fit Week and are, as I'm recording this, you guys are currently crushing it in Fit Week. Super proud of you guys to put in the work, publishing the videos. It really keeps the community going, and it's awesome. If you want to be a part of the community, go to garagedymathlete.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial. It's a phenomenal time to do that. Get started right here at the beginning of a new cycle and try things out. But that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching or listening. And remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagedymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.